Hello and welcome to the Irish NFL Show. My name is Shane Brennan. Tonight I'm joined by Noel Dowling and Kieran O'Donovan calling in from Cork as we give the preview for all of this weekend's action as we are coming into, I think, week 15 of NFL action. I can't believe we're getting so close to the Super Bowl and playoff season, and there really is a lot to play for on both ends of the league, both in terms of the tankathon and the race to be Super Bowl champions. A couple of things to, I guess, notch off before we get into tonight's previews. Firstly, for anybody who is looking for our take or our opinion on the news coming out from the Irish Examiner tonight, that it seems that an NFL game in Ireland may be imminent. We will touch on that in a podcast maybe later in the week. I guess it might be a little bit inside baseball, but my own capacity in the Irish Independent, I have been trying to suss it out and see if we can get clarity on the situation. The only thing I will say is I've contacted the NFL and they have offered no comment. So I will let you all in on that bit. In terms of what's happening this weekend, I'd like to remind everybody here that our show is brought to you by QuimBet. And if you enjoy all of the content that we do, please hit the subscribe button, like on YouTube, make sure you share around on Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. It really does help us grow and is very important going into the business end of the season. In terms of what we're looking at tonight, guys, we are looking at seven 6 o'clock games on Sunday, 5 in the 9 o'clock window, which is an absolute corker, by the way. This 9 o'clock window is going to be tasty. We'll also touch on Sunday night football as well. Monday night football is a double header, which we will preview with the podcast on Monday at lunchtime. So we will leave those two games for now. But in terms of our first session, guys, which we'd like to remind everybody is brought to you by Root Point, demonstrating the value of global PR and comms, is the AFC North matchup the AFC matchup between the Chiefs and the Browns. It's funny, Kieran, when I look at this one, because almost every week I come into this and I seem to preach that somehow the Chiefs can be taken down, that something about them isn't quite motoring right this season. I think Kieran Boyle was talking about on the show on Monday night, saying that as much as they've never really been able to fully fire, and their point differential and the fact that they are 10-1 now, one-score games, it definitely feels that they are not the complete article. But when they're coming up against the Browns team, who this year we know have been inconsistent, who we know are definitely beatable, but as we saw against the Pittsburgh Steelers a couple of weeks ago, can definitely pull out a good performance on their day. You have to wonder if the Chiefs are going to drop a game. I don't really see that it's going to be this one, but you look at what Jameis Winston can bring, you look at how the Browns defense can perform, you look at the fact that the Chiefs haven't been dominating in the way that a team with only one loss all season should be. You really can't say that anything probably could happen in this matchup.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, from week to week, we can see that the Chiefs are showing themselves capable of losing a game to absolutely anybody. The problem is they don't lose to anybody. Watching that kick, the last second kick against the Chargers at the weekend, even as it started to drift, I was watching it and said, there's absolutely no way that this is going wide. There's no way that this isn't going over the bar. And you had to laugh when it hit the post and went over, because that's just you can just add that to the list of ways that the Chiefs have won in crazy ways, last minute scenarios. It's really, really funny. But I think of the Chiefs in the larger context. Back early in the days when I was following the NFL, you looked at the Patriots from 2014 up to 2018. They went to 4 or 5 Super Bowls, and every single year the media and the public and the neutrals were trying to find a knock on them, and everyone was finding ways to convince themselves that no, the Chiefs aren't going to, the Chiefs are done. Even in 2014, people were writing Tom Brady's obituary, and every single year they came back and he made heroes of Amendola and Julian Edelman, even though he wasn't supposed to have any weapons. And it's almost like history repeating itself. The Chiefs are one of those teams. They are a dynasty. Nobody wants to see Man City winning the Premier League every year. Nobody wants to see Verstappen winning the Formula One. They're up there on the pedestal, and and that's all. That's all people want to see is them knocked off. Look, in terms of this game itself, neither of these two teams are putting up amazing numbers. Mahomes has thrown 20 TDs and 11 picks. The Browns have lost 4 of the last five games. Mahomes is 17th in passer rating. The Chiefs are not flattering on, they're not flattering. Their stats aren't flattering anybody, but they are the Chiefs. They're just finding the ways to win these games. the Browns have lost 4 of the last 5, as you mentioned, but that one win was an absolute glorious night in the snow, where we're just reminded of the positivity that Jameis Winston brings to this league, and he's enough to light up anyone's, to brighten up anyone's day. And as I said a few weeks ago, he has the capability to to turn it on, and get that ball to Jerry Jeudy, get the ball to his receivers, and if Nick Chubb has a good day on the ground, they're absolutely capable of pulling off a win. But as I said, Chiefs said the Chiefs, this could go down to the wire again, and I wonder how they're going to nick it this week.
Yeah, I don't really know, Noel, when you're looking at this game, whether the question is if the Chiefs are going to win, but how are they going to win? What's going to go right for them? What's going to go wrong for the Browns in order for the things to fall their way? I'm going to give my pick out now. I won't dwell on it too much. I picked the Chiefs to win this game, partly because out of a lack of confidence in the Browns. The fact that they're coming off a bye week, and look, a bye week does count for a lot of this end of the season, because I think, as people were alluding to earlier in the week, that rest counts, and a lot of players are injured and they're coming back. But the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they're playing against a Browns team who I don't think, sure enough, they've had 2 weeks to try and build up for this game mentally. I don't see a pathway for the Browns to properly put up a challenge for them. But the thing is, if it comes close, Noel, and if if you're waiting to see who kind of wins the bounce of the ball, which way the coin toss is going to go, you just know it's always going to fall on the Chiefs. And look, after my prediction that the Chargers will beat them on Sunday Night Football, the same way that I've given up on picking the Jets to win, I'm giving up on picking the Chiefs to lose, because they always find a way to pull out a victory here. And I just wonder what your view on this is. Do you think this is one where they might have to find a way to pull a victory here? Will they get an even bigger victory out of this? Or is there a possibility the Browns actually might be the ones to shut them up?
This is the Browns team that have 3 wins this season, and 2 of those wins are the Ravens and the Steelers. So it's a crazy kind of team when you think about it. But I can't see them beating the Chiefs. I mean, look, we know what the Chiefs have been this season. I think this will be another week where they'll win anyway. I mean, how they'll win, who knows? This week it could be 15-13 with a last-second safety. That's just the way this Chiefs team has been going all season. But you'd be hard-pressed to think that this Browns team could do anything. I mean, they feel like a team at this stage that are on the beach and are just waiting for this season to end. And the Chiefs are just doing what they need to do. They're playing down to their opponents in a way, and just kind of getting the results that they need to get without really pushing themselves forward. And I think this will be another week where they will win. I think it might be an easier win this week. I don't think it'll be a last-second heroics or a 1 or 2 pointer. I think they might beat them by a touchdown or more. I just think this Browns team now are finished, and the Chiefs are a better team from top to bottom. I mean, we have Njoku. I know Kira mentioned Jeudy, and I mentioned Chubb. There are players who could cause problems for the Chiefs. But really, overall, like, this Browns team isn't good enough. Yeah, I think the Chiefs will take it. I think it'll be easy enough. I don't think it'll be one of those ones that they've had all season. I think they'll beat them by a touchdown or more.
You're talking about the Chiefs being on the beach. When it comes to beach, there's no better beach in America than in Miami. And we saw last week in Buskers on the Ball, now that the Dolphins managed to just about get by the New York Jets. And this could come up against the Houston Texans team, who are coming off a bye week. Texans coming in as 3-point favorites, according to QuinnBet. This game being played in Houston. A battle of two teams, really, that really, I think, need a good tail end of the season for 2 different reasons. The Texans, yes, they have their division sewn up, but I think all the talk before the season about whether they will be genuine contenders coming to playoffs, whether they're coming into a bit of a sophomore slump, a good performance here would really go a good way to, I guess, ease those concerns. The Dolphins, meanwhile, are sitting at 6 and 7. They're in a very late season push for the playoffs after trying to atone for the fact that they couldn't really play without Tua Tagovailoa as quarterback. Noel, when you're looking at this one, it's very difficult to pick a clear deciding factor in this, because these are two teams who I think really should have been playing better this season than they have been. The Texans with a better record and earned a better record, certainly. When it comes to this particular matchup, does the bye week by Houston count for more than the mental impact of a victory that the Dolphins had last week? Sorry, no, can't hear you.
There we go. We'll take the mute off. That always helps. Look, I think this Texans team needed that bye week. They've had such a tough kind of year. There's been a lot more expected. I think this is a really interesting game. These are two teams that feel very similar to me. You know, they have quarterbacks on their day who are really good quarterbacks. Tua, since he came back from his injury, has really boosted up this Miami offense and brought other players back into play again. They have, good wide receivers. We have Waddle and Hill on one side. We have Tank Dell and Nico Collins on the other, who are players who can hurt you when they get going. And then we have, two good running backs in there. Obviously, Achan is a really important player for this Miami team. And then we look across then, Joe Mixon has had a really good season and at times has driven this Texans team along. So for me, it is a really close game between these teams. The big question, though, comes for me is this Texans offensive line, which has been, feels like the biggest issue this team has had all season. If the Dolphins can get pressure on CJ Stroud, that could be a big problem for them. We know, like on the opposite side, they have good pass rushers with the Texans, but it's just this offensive line for the Texans feel like it really can be a problem. But another thing I have as well for the Texans, I think the Texans really need to be winning this game, because I know you mentioned they feel like they have the division sewn up. I don't think it's that cut and dry at the moment with the Colts. I mean, when you look at the Texans, their remaining games are the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Titans. They could be difficult games. Then you look at the Colts, who have the Titans, the Giants, and the Jags. So the Colts are a couple of games behind. So if the Texans do slip up, this Colts team will think that they can catch them and can chase them down. So it's really important, I think, that the Texans take that week off and really build and come back. And for that reason, I'm going to go for the Texans just because they're at home. I'm going to give them that home win in a situation where I do think they need to win. I think the Dolphins have obviously looked really good recently. They bar a loss to Green Bay, they really feel like they've started to get going again. I know I've mentioned, I think their run game really needs to pick up again. I did mention Achan. He seems to be more explosive recently in the passing game than he has in the running game. I think that's a dimension they need to get going again. But these are two potentially good teams, two exciting teams who I think for each team, they have their own reasons where I think they need this win. So I think it will be a good game. And as I say, I'll go with the Texans, really needing to put this division away in a home game to just maybe squeak past the Dolphins.
When I look at this game, it's interesting. I think a point that was made by somebody during the week is that the Dolphins have the worst special teams in the league, and this is a consistent problem for them in the last 3 seasons. They've generally been either 32nd, at best they got to 29th in the league when it comes to special teams. And in close games like this, things like that do count for a lot. Even if they're playing in a dome, they're playing in nice weather, the cold weather accusations will not bite Miami as they often do at this time of year. But to me, I think just the physical nature of the Houston team gives them an edge here. And yes, they're coming off a bye, which should mean that they should be more physical. But I think, as you alluded to there, on the line of scrimmage, I think this is an area where I think the Texans will be able to get a greater grapple on things. I don't think the Dolphins will be able to establish the run in a way that they would like to, even if they're not exactly great at it. I mean, their rushing offense is 24th in the league. The Texans' rush defense is 10th in the league. And it is, considering how good the Dolphins' rush offense was last year with Tua Tagovailoa in as quarterback, they're relying so much more on his passing game now. So unless somehow the passing game manages to light up and score 3 or 4 touchdowns, I find it very difficult for a path where the Dolphins can be physical enough to outpace whatever the Texans defense can throw at them. So for that reason, I'm going for Houston to win this game. Kieran, what's your pick?
Well, I think that's exactly what the Dolphins are going to do. I think they are going to light it up in the passing game. I agree with you. They don't show, I suppose, the toughness or the physicality, but they do have the flair. And the Texans haven't convinced me in the last several weeks at all. They've really been stuttering along. We were saying all along that we were waiting for Nico Collins to return and that CJ Stroud would get his groove back. But too many times I've watched him and they've struggled to get anything going when they really had to have it. I know, Mixon has bailed him out a few times, and Dalton Schultz, has been a decent receiver and outlet for him. But I don't think he's found that level of consistency that he did last year. And I go back to several weeks ago. I think he made a huge mistake in terms of football gods or karma when he put his arm around Caleb Williams and tried to give him that brotherly advice or the advice of a seasoned pro. I saw that and I said, Jesus, what are you thinking? This is you've had 1 season in the league. If that was a 10-year veteran or someone like that, you'd say fair enough. But I think he almost jinxed himself a little bit. I think he came across a little bit too I don't know, too presumptuous there that he was just going to coast along again this season. And I think he's struggled a bit. And I give the Dolphins a good shout. I think they're going to win this game.
Interesting one. Kieran has the Dolphins managing to stay on their road to the playoffs if they manage to get a victory here. In terms of teams who are definitely on the road to playoffs, we were looking at the Washington Commanders. They have definitely performed quite solidly over the course of the season. They traveled to New Orleans, maybe not for the last time this year if they get as far as the Super Bowl, although I don't really think that is going to happen. But they are looking particularly confident in this game, Kieran. I'll go back to you on this one. They're 7 points favorites. I think, managing to get the offense back after a little blip earlier in the season may give them a bit more confidence. They are against the Saints team who look a little bit out of the running when it comes to that playoff push, which we are expecting. But at this time of year, as I was talking to Tyler Conklin a couple of weeks ago in the run-up to the Jets event last year, I think when people look at teams and say, oh, well, they're out of the playoff race or they don't look particularly strong in the playoff race, mathematically or not, people say, oh, well, what can you fully expect from these groups? But you have to expect a lot from the individual. And in these games, I wonder whether the strength of the individual can be strong enough for the Saints with all these guys trying to play for contracts, play for themselves, play for pride. The team is trying to play for pride. They're playing under an interim head coach at the moment, against a Commanders team who will certainly come in with a lot of confidence. But there's no guarantee of victory. And I'm just wondering what way you see the cards falling on this one.
Yeah, I spoke to Brian about the Commanders. We touched on it during the Thursday night preview. About the fact that while the Commanders have that 7th seed at the moment, there are a few teams creeping up on them, including 2 teams that are playing in the Thursday night game. So, look, Jaden Daniels, I think, has been excellent. I think that the Commanders have been excellent, particularly at the start of the season. But I think they've started to maybe to lose a little bit of ground or lose a little bit of confidence in the last few weeks, or consistency, if that's a better word. I think this game just simply is going to come down to the injuries. I think the Saints minus Taysom Hill, first of all, before you mention any quarterback, I know he's a quarterback as well, but before you mention anyone else, Taysom Hill is the guy that makes the Saints go, and I think he's a bigger loss than anybody else. But Derek Carr has found some consistency in the last few weeks as well, and I think it's a shame for him to see his season is over. So I think just those 2 players, I don't think they can lose. They can live without. I think they're going to drop off significantly. And I think with the Commanders running, they don't have a very easy running. Look, I'm struggling to remember the three teams they'll have left after this week, but I think this is the one that they have to win anyway. At least get that under their belt. I think they have the Cowboys, the Eagles. I can't think of the
Falcons.
The Falcons, yeah. So look, they have a tricky road in, especially with those teams creeping up behind them. So I think this is one that they'll get out with all right.
Yeah, I have to say when I'm looking at this one, I'm picking the Commanders as well, probably because they need it in the context of the wild card race, not only in terms of positioning of seeds, but just to make sure that they keep enough space between them and, I think, as you say, whoever will probably finish running up in the NFC West between the Rams and the Seahawks. So the Commanders aren't fully home and dry yet. The fact that they face the Eagles, face the Cowboys, and the Falcons in there will be a tricky enough fixture. I think they will, coming off the bye week, I think they will be adequately enough prepared for this. And sometimes there is a danger, considering that they play against the Eagles the following week, that they almost have one eye on the next week and not fully focus on the task at hand. But I think coming off a game where they scored 42 points going into the bye week, they scored 42 points against the Titans, and considering Jaden Daniels, I think he's still going through his rookie learning curves. That bit of a dip he had in November, he might be able to learn enough from to properly put in a performance that works this week before going up against Philadelphia. Noel, what's your pick?
Yeah, I agree with a lot with what you guys have been saying. I think this Commanders team is a much better team than this Saints team anyway, especially when you have the injuries that are involved. It's a game they need to win because, as Kieran says, they have a tough run in, and there's a lot of teams now snapping at the heels, looking for that wild card spot and to make it into the playoffs. So, but I think this Commanders team, will come back. Will take care of the Saints team, who have done really, really well under Darren Rizzi, but there's only so much you can do, especially with the injuries they've built up on offense.
Before we head into the end of the segment, we'll just go through 2 games that we put into our quick hits. Firstly, Jets at Jags. Interesting matchup here. Firstly, between 2 teams who have presences in Ireland, as we saw with some of the things that Jags have been doing over the last while, and the fact that Jets did hold a watch party last week. I'm looking at this game and I'm trying to figure what I trust less: the Jets as an organization, or Mac Jones as a quarterback. And even though the Jags managed to come away with a victory, you probably couldn't really attribute that to Mac Jones, whose offense, if I'm right in recalling, scored a grand total of 10 points. That said, I've said quite plainly that I'm not picking the Jets to win the game for the rest of the season because I just cannot trust them when it comes to my picks. Plus, I'm slightly convinced that wearing all that Jets gear last Sunday has put a bit of a curse on me, just the way that my week has been going. So I'm definitely wearing my Patriots cap from now on, trying to get the graces of the New England gods back into my veins. So for that reason, I'm picking the Jags to win this one. No.
Saying the pictures are out there. They'll come back to haunt you in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. The internet is forever. Look, yeah, I've said repeatedly as well that I'm done picking the Jets. I don't see the Jets winning anything, doing anything, beating anyone. But this week I'm going for the Jets. I don't know. I mean, they have players there. They've given away a lot of games recently. You know, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams at times over the last few weeks have had that old connection that seems to be going. They have some good players on offense, and I just think they should be too strong to beat this to lose or to beat this Jags team. Again, it's the Jets. They could do anything. They could be well ahead and throw it away. But I think this weekend they'll get that way, and I think they'll beat the Jags.
Although it must be said, though, when I am looking at the ability of both teams to score, in 3 of the last 4 games, the Jags have scored 10 points or less. They scored 20 against the Houston Texans and still ended up losing that game. Whereas the Jets, as we saw, was able to put up 26 against the Dolphins and 21 against the Seahawks. So I don't know. I'm still backing the Jags. Don't worry about that. But I guess I'm maybe laying out a carpet for Kieran to make his pick.
No, I'm with Noel, and as I said, like I've absolutely zero faith in the Jets either, but I've less in the Jags. I think the Jets have the quality to get over this Jags team, and if they don't, I wouldn't be surprised either. But I'm going to pick the Jets.
We'll stick with you, Kieran, for the matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers. Maybe a slight background to this is that I always thought that Bill Belichick would be coaching in Dallas next year. Now, he is coaching in North Carolina, not at the Panthers, but at the college football team. In terms of this NFL matchup, Kieran, what way do you see this one going?
That was a nice connection you made out now, Shane. In fairness, that was slick. Look, I think the Cowboys have shown a little bit of a spring in the last few weeks, but I have to say I admire the way the Panthers have been playing hard. They've been playing some of the better teams pretty hard as well. So they're playing for their coach. They're playing for Dave Canales, and that's a good sign of him. Look, they've got nothing to play for, only, as you said, pride and contracts and all that. But it's still very, when a team has a record and has the season that they've had, it's not always easy to go out there week on week. And they have been playing teams hard. I actually do think the Panthers are going to cause, if this is an upset, just cause a mini upset and beat the Cowboys this week.
I'm fully on the Panthers hype train, by the way. I've picked them the last couple of weeks, and I'm picking them again because by Jesus, they should have had a victory by now between their matchup against the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. I'm hoping they get over the line here. Maybe I'm going my heart over ahead a little bit. I do think they are playing for Dave Canales a lot more than they are. And I think, as well as that, I mean, when we talk about the tankathon and the kind of race to the bottom almost, as we always do at this time of year, I think for the Panthers, more than it is the case in the other teams who are in that top 5 draft pick, that the value of victories now and for those players to learn how to win is more than the value of a draft pick. And I think players in there know that. I think Dave Canales know that, because next year they're not going to have a different quarterback. They're not going to have a different head coach or GM, and they're definitely not going to have a different owner. So I think that they will want victory and plan for victory better than a lot of other teams. And the Dallas Cowboys are not a team who I have much confidence in. So I'm going for the Panthers on this one. No.
I'm going the opposite to you two lads, but I'll be honest with you. I was all week. I was Panthers. I don't know why at the end I decided to go Cowboys. Because I think, as you guys have already said, this Panthers team have really stepped it up the last few weeks. It feels like things are really starting to click for them. Bryce Young, after his troubles and whatever and being dropped, has come back in and looks good. And the Panthers seem to be on the right track. This is a Cowboys team who I don't trust. I very rarely trust the Cowboys, anyway, especially when it comes to playoffs, which they're obviously not going to this season. I don't know. I just feel CD Lamb is just that kind of special player that I think he may be able to just differentiate himself between the Cowboys and the Panthers. But I absolutely would not be shocked if the Panthers were to get the win with the way they're going. But I think the Cowboys will just about sneak a game against this Panthers team. Maybe.
Maybe. All right, that brings us into our first section of this Week 15 preview. Welcome back to part 2 of the Irish NFL Show's preview of Week 15. That break brought to you by Buskers on the Ball, where NFL action is shown all Sunday, every Sunday, and points are available from €6 onwards when the red zone is on the television. The next section is brought to you by QuimBet, and interesting stuff from QuimBet for this next game, which is, of course, the rematch of Super Bowl 35, Baltimore Ravens and New York Giants, at this time in MetLife Stadium. Does anyone want to guess how big or what the favorite, what the money line is for the Ravens? The Ravens are coming to this as 16.5-point favorites in New Jersey, away from home, which, according to the person who wrote the stat on the sheet, which I can guarantee you was not one of us, maybe one of the Giants fans in the group, is the biggest underdog home spread for the Giants since the 1960s. I really don't know what to make of this game, except for try to manufacture hope for the Giants. I really like. To what end can you say that the Giants, in any respect, are good enough to try and battle against a Ravens team who not only need the victory but are solid enough to go and get the victory? It's interesting that game, Super Bowl 35, the Ravens won by a score of 34 points to 7. There's a good chance of that scoreline being repeated again if the Giants are lucky enough to get 7 points. We won't dwell too much on this one, lads. So, Noah, what way do you see this one going?
Oh no, I might not go as high as the 16, but I think this Ravens team will take care of this Giants team. The Giants are done; their season's over. I think Drew Lock is questionable. I don't know if he's actually going to go or not, which means they'll be going over to Tommy probably at quarterback. I mean, they keep flip flopping quarterbacks for whatever reason, injuries and the likes. They're just done. This Giants team are finished, and this Ravens team. You know, they're a really good team. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, year in, year out, is up there in terms of MVP talk. You know, Henry is there this year, putting up the numbers, doing what he does, and the Ravens need this win. I mean, when you look at the standings, the Ravens, you know, they've got 8 wins there, but then right beside them is the Chargers with 8, the Broncos with 8, then the Colts, who I said, as I mentioned earlier, have kind of a couple of easy games. They're there with 6. They may fancy the chances to win a couple of games. So this Ravens team just need to take care of business, get this win, and try and ensure themselves that they can get into that, you know, into the playoffs. Obviously, they have the Steelers next week, so there are a couple of games back there. If they can get a win this week, if the Steelers, for whatever reason, were to falter, they could find themselves back in. But look, this Ravens team is too strong. This Giants team is again, like some other teams, on the beach, and you know, I don't even see this being a contest. So, Ravens.
When you talk about them being on the beach, the greatest right arm coming from the Jersey Shore will be starting for the New York Giants. Tommy DeVito is back in the starter position as Drew Lock is going around with his foot in a boot. Supposedly he had an ankle injury. Kieran, is there any room for a bit of DeVito magic? Can we get the Tommy Cutlets magic coming back here?
No, absolutely not. No, I think that the Tommy Cutlets magic has long passed. But there's something really ominous about this game. Like more so than any other game, this seems to be the biggest dead rubber in you know this weekend. I'm not saying the Giants can win. I'm just saying that the Ravens, there's some, you know, a lot of time when you have these games where you think they're going to be inconsequential, something might happen, you know, and something might. This is I don't know. I've just got this ominous feeling, and what I would say for the Ravens is take care of business and keep your weapons healthy. That's all I would say. Just get over the line, get your win. You don't have to cover that 16.5-point spread. Get everybody, you know, and the Ravens do need a win here. They're not. I wouldn't say they've been coasting. Like I picked them early on in the season as one of my favorites to go to the Super Bowl, and I still think they have the quality. Their defense has been questioned, I know, but yeah, no, just get this one, potential banana skin or you know, potential injury maker. Just get over it and move on to next week.
protect your weapons and make sure you get the job done. That's probably a line from The Sopranos somewhere. That's a very interesting one in the concept of the Giants. We'll move on, Noel, to the matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and Tennessee Titans. Bengals coming to this as 5-point favorites. We saw them win on the Simpsons special on Monday Night Football, which is certainly a fantastic entertainment. They're coming into this on a little bit of a short week. The Titans taking a bit of a break, but they got quite a big bruising last time out against the Washington Commanders. We're not quite sure what to fully make of the Titans. They're now playing at home. And we know that they've got Tony Pollard on the field. We know that the quarterback play can show up good flashes depending on who's in there and depending on the scheme coming in. Against the Bengals team who, are getting into a bit of a late season run. Might be a case of too little, too late. But I think this game is probably tighter than some of the money line expects. What way do you look at this now?
Yeah, I think in terms of the Bengals, you're spot on with too little, too late. I mean, these guys have the offense to really challenge anyone in the NFL, and they just had a horrendous start to the season, and now it feels like they're really kind of slipping into gear. This Titans team have been a big disappointment all year. I mean, Will Levis, when you watch him, he does have the ability to make these big, explosive plays and to do some really good things at quarterback, but then he has the ability to make the weirdest, ridiculous interception you'll ever see. And I can't count on this Titans team. They just don't feel like, for whatever reason, they've clicked right. We look at last weekend's 10-6 defeat to the Jags. It's just a dour game. I think this Bengals offense, with Burrow there, Chase Brown is doing well, and then you have, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think these just will take care of the Titans. I think the Titans now are, the season is well and truly done. They've nothing really to play for, and I mean, I'd say the Bengals team, they're not going to the playoffs now, but you still feel like this offense at this moment in time is rolling. And I think that's going to be the case this weekend. I think the Bengals, I think they will cover. I think they'll take care of the Titans fairly easily.
Looking at this one, actually, the injury report says that Tony Pollard did not practice or participate in practice during the week. Probably doesn't sound very good for probably one of the key cogs in the Titans' offensive game plan, because I think when the run game works well, it actually eases the pressure off Will Levis for him to maybe think a little bit more about what he's doing. If you make the defense that Tennessee's up against think a little bit, you give Will Levis a bit more room to find the right pass and to not let the ball slip away. His problems with turnovers were very bad earlier in the season. They've gotten a little better as the year has gone on. We saw that against Houston. We saw that against New England as well. In terms of when the run game works is when Tennessee works. The fact that Pollard is being taken out of that, the fact that the Bengals are in a pretty decent run of form. I know that they're coming off a Monday night game and they're traveling away from home. I just think they've got too much quality to let this game slip. And I think that T. Higgins in particular is the right kind of person to let this game be explosive for him. I think there's a couple of these games, the Bengals, even if they're not chasing the playoff spot, they want to finish that season at 9-8. They want to have a couple of decent wins in there. There's a couple of players in there who want to prove their worth in order to get their big money contracts, or to make sure that they stay within the setup, whatever happens. And we've talked about it before as well. The Bengals have no problem scoring points. It's defense where they struggle, and I don't see the Tennessee offense as being a really tough challenge for them. Kieran?
Yeah, look, I think it's an absolute shame that I agree with you that the Bengals are hanging on by a thread. They're the last team that hasn't been mathematically eliminated. They're the bottom of the barrel in terms of teams that are still playoff hopefuls. But I do think it's only mathematically. I do think come next week or the week after, they're going to be out of the running. I think it's a shame that we're not going to see Burrow and Jamar Chase in the playoffs. Like, Burrow leads QBs in yards, 3,706, touchdowns 33. Chase is leading receivers in yards, touchdowns, yards after catch. They're incredible, the two of them, and they're just lights out week after week, and they're like two kids in the backyard. You mentioned Tony Pollard being questionable. I think Tyler Boyd is questionable as well. So you're just kind of wondering where any kind of offense is going to come from the Titans. So look, I do think it's going to be a case of the Bengals outscoring the Titans this weekend. I know the Titans defense has been solid at times as well. just a word on Levis as well. I saw a bit of Levis last year, and I kind of thought to myself, God, there's a bit of spark to this guy. There is talent there, and maybe he'll prove that in the long run yet. But I just think it's an awful shame when your name becomes a verb, and that verb is associated with making head scratching decisions throughout games. And there's been meme after meme. I actually feel sorry for him this season. I do hope he has a bounce back year, or that he might find the right spot for himself in the league. But no, I think the Bengals are going to do this. Are going to get this game. They're going to get it done in this game. Sorry, but it's too little too late, as you guys said.
Right, that's enough for the early window. We're cracking into the late window, lads, and I have to say this one is probably one of the best ones. The witching hour is generally the most interesting part of a Sunday, but when you look at some of the matchup in this late window, the fact that there's 4 games to sink our teeth into, there's some really great ones, and probably the standout matchup is between the Buffalo Bills and Detroit Lions. The Lions come to this as 1.5-point favorites. They're playing at home, playing in a stadium that, remember, the Bills did have to call home. Was it last season, 2 seasons ago, when the snow was so bad in Buffalo, they had to move over to Detroit and call it their home stadium? But that doesn't exactly give them too much of an advantage heading into this one. It's interesting because, of course, the Bills are coming off not a shock loss, but a maybe slightly unexpected loss to the Rams on Monday night against the Lions team, who are having a bit of a mini bye after playing 2 Thursdays in a row. They're coming in on 10 days rest as opposed to coming in on 6 days rest. I don't know if we're putting too much stock into that, because, of course, on the other side of the ball, we have Josh Allen, who is an absolute freak of nature and can make anything happen. This is one of the most entertaining matchups. Certainly, if this was the Super Bowl that America was feasted to, I don't think anybody would be complaining because of the quality on show here and just the nature of the fan bases themselves. But no, somebody has to come away victorious in this. You know, the Bills are in a position where they've locked up their division. The Lions, if they lose, the Vikings are right there sort of licking their lips, and I think the Lions know that. And I just wonder whether that kind of mentality might depend or might dictate how these teams prepare for this particular matchup.
Yeah, well, I think especially on the Lions' point of view, you know, the Vikings are snapping there. They're keeping them on their toes. So I think the Lions won't let up at all. They'll keep going. I think they have this offense this season that has been absolutely phenomenal. You know, from top to bottom, we look at Jared Goff even has been amazing this season. Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs have been just one of the best tandems you've seen at running back for a number of years. It's just constant, both guys getting on the score sheet. And then, look, we know what Amon St. Rod, Jameson Williams had a good season. So this offense is absolutely full of explosive talent, and all season they've been showing it. It's defense where there might be some questions. I mean, I think this Lions team have done really, really well to deal with the amount of injuries they've had on defense, to keep going the way they're going. And that'll be really tested this weekend against the Bills team, which, again, you mentioned Josh Allen last weekend. He throws 3 touchdowns. He runs in 3 touchdowns. For me, he's MVP this season so far. As good as Saquon has been, Lamar has been, I just think Josh Allen has absolutely been the most valuable player to his team. And that's this Bills team that he has absolutely taken on his shoulders. He's taken players on offense who are good players, but I think he's elevated them, and we've seen what they've done. Last weekend, I think, was just one of those crazy weekends with their defense. I don't think you're going to be seeing that again, even against this good Lions team. But I think, as you mentioned, the Lions, they're being pushed by the Vikings. They really still need to keep winning. And I think a Dan Campbell team will always have that mentality of going out to win. And I think playing at home, I'm going to give the Lions just that little squeak of that favoritism to go and win it by a couple of points. But it should be a fantastic game. And as you say, I mean, if this was a Super Bowl come February, you know, I think we'd all be in for a treat.
I was looking at this game. I'll be honest, I've been over and back on this one for the last couple of days. I'm really trying to put myself into sort of figuring out what the actual difference will be. And I was reading in the LA Times the line that says it doesn't feel that the Bills are going to lose back-to-back games. This is not something they do. And they are better than Green Bay, who, in fairness, Green Bay have pushed Detroit to the limit. Chicago have pushed Detroit to the limit. We're talking so much about Detroit's ability to dominate games, Detroit's ability to physically dominate games, Detroit's ability to always find a way to, come out with a victory. Sorry, I had to sneeze there. Maybe I'm allergic to talking of the Bills. But it's an interesting one, though, because despite all of that, I just don't. I have more confidence in the Lions actually get the victory. Of course, the resting is important because the Lions, more than most other teams, are very physical in the way they play. And I look at some of the particular matchups that are going to be key to this as well. I mean, we look at the way Dion Dawkins has been playing. We look at the way that, you know, Teron Johnson's going to have to mark up against Amon-Ra St. Brown. We look at the way that Terrion Arnold's going to have to mark up against Keon Coleman. There's a lot of key matchups there, which I just give the edge to the Lions in terms of personnel as a team. You know, it's as much as Jared Goff has been, and he's definitely good enough for Detroit. Josh Allen is the better quarterback, and he has the ability to pull out the greater level of magic. But I just think that the Lions are a stronger team, and they will just about find a way to win this. Am I fully confident in this? No, because this really can go either way. These are two excellent teams battling up, but I don't know. I just have more confidence in the Lions. You're also an aficionado of the NFC North, Kieran. You're looking at the Lions here. Is there a weakness that Buffalo can pick at here, or what way do you think this matchup will go?
Yeah, well, it broke my heart last week to see Jared Goff marching up the field whenever they had to have a drive. And oh God, when Dan Campbell went for that fourth, when he went for it in that fourth down situation, there was just an air of inevitability, and I was going to get to that later on about how that game was going to finish. I was texting my brother in Vancouver. We were watching it. He was watching it over, and I was just saying, look, this is the way it played out. I said that's the way it's going to play out. They're going to wind down the clock. They're going to get a last minute field goal. They're not going to give Jordan Love the ball again, and they have that ability, especially when you've got this coach who's going to he'll really live by the sword and die by the sword. It might catch up to him. At some point, and maybe he'd be better off if it caught up to him this week as opposed to in the playoffs. I think that was a gutsy move. It was probably an unnecessary move as well, putting the game on the line the way he did. But yeah, look, the Lions, as you mentioned, they have the weapons, they have the means to get at you. It's the defense, as you said, Noel. The defense has been so banged up. I was hoping that the Packers might take advantage of it. The injuries have to catch up with them at some point. And I have this game going to overtime. I think there's a strong possibility that this could go all the way down to the wire, and it could be a field goal or touchdown. And I'm just giving the edge to the Bills on this occasion, simply because of Josh Allen being the difference maker, just the way he's playing at the moment. And I know they came out the wrong side of it last week, but he was incredible again. And look, the Bills are, depending on what weight they put on the one seed, they're desperate now. They have to win out to put any pressure. They have to hope that the Chiefs will slip up, not once but twice. But obviously, if they lose this week, then the one seed is gone, or the chance of a one seed is gone, or even possibly they'll be battling for the two seeds. So they do have plenty to play for this week, and so look, I think I'm just giving it to them, just giving them that edge, as I said, possibly in overtime.
Right, we're going to round off the segment with the matchup between the New England Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona on a 3-game losing slump. New England coming off the bye before going 2 games in a row on the road. Interesting one here. Cardinals are coming to the 6-point favorites. We've seen how they play at home. Generally, it's a little bit stronger. Didn't exactly look like it against Seattle last week. They've had to play Seattle twice in 3 weeks. Lost both of them. Certainly lost a hell of a lot of steam in terms of their push to top the NFC West. They really need to get right game, and they will look at New England coming in here. I feel like they can get it. Interesting thing though is that when you actually look at the way that the Arizona offense and New England defense matches up, I actually think this is a probably decent matchup for the Patriots. The Patriots' problem all year has actually been fatigue of defenders. I've questioned here, and I've questioned multiple times how the strength and conditioning and the training situation is going, because a lot of time players just look very tired on the field. They look soft against Tennessee. They look bad in flashes against the Jets away from home. It was the problem that the Joe Mayo called out against the Jaguars in Wembley Stadium. There's a few other flashpoints as well where you look at the Patriots defense and go, Jesus, they just look wrecked. It looks like they're not actually fully trying. But they're coming off a bye week on the road, knowing full well that they have a few things to play for against an offense which in the red zone has completely collapsed in their ability to turn yards into points. And we've seen this 3 games in a row now from Kyler Murray and co. James Conner hasn't been able to punch in the ball in the way that he should have been. Kyler Murray, I think, is becoming a little bit more predictable in his play. They can get yards in the 20 to 20. Once they get inside the red zone, that's when things become difficult. And I think that that's the actual game where defensively New England can really get a control on. They will let Arizona get yards. I think that Arizona will get more yards than New England will on the day. I actually think that the Patriots might be able to get a couple of plays in the red zone here, or at least keep Arizona to kicking field goals long enough that Drake May and an offense which is taking a bit of time to learn new ways and inject a bit of confidence into themselves. And for that reason, not only out of confidence in the Patriots defense, but just a belief that the Cardinals will find it very difficult to fully recuperate after a 3-game losing streak. I actually think the Patriots might have a chance to win this one. And I think the Patriots will win this one. I'm really surprised at the Cardinals because I said a couple of weeks ago they were probably the best team, certainly performance-wise, in the NFC West. But I just don't feel the sense of leadership or the sense of, I guess, finesse or the ability to finish on offense and on defense as well. I don't like the defense hasn't been making the kind of turnover, game-changing interception type plays that they were making earlier in the season. We're not seeing the plays being made on special teams. The Cardinals seem like they're just losing a bit of steam here. And I think the Patriots might be just well perched to come in here and maybe just snatch a win. Might only be by 3 points, but that would be just good enough. Maybe I'm looking at this maybe from a little bit of a home field lens, no, but I don't know. The Cardinals definitely need this victory. You have to wonder whether they have enough to go and get it.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Is it yourself?
No, go ahead, Kieran. No, Kieran, go ahead. No, go on.
Yeah, no, you could be right. I mean, this is a game that I wasn't overly confident picking either side. Like the Cardinals coming off 3 losses, as you mentioned, the Seahawks twice and the Vikings, but they did play the Vikings pretty close, 23-22, and they could have come away with the victory there, and I would have been a happy Packers fan if they had done that night. Like Kyler Murray is 5th in QBR in the league, but in the last 5 games he's thrown 4 TDs and 5 interceptions. He's very up and down, and I've listened to your earlier shows, and I've heard Kieran Boyle mention lack of leadership in him, and he's not the kind of quarterback that's that fills you with confidence that he can lead a team. Like this game, looking at both teams' top receivers, you're looking at 2 tight ends, Hunter Henry and Trey McBride, and that's no disrespect to them, 2 really good tight ends, but it's kind of telling you that there's a lack of quality out wide in this game. I know Marvin Harrison, I do trust that he's going to grow into the league, and I back him to have a fairly fruitful career, but yards wise it hasn't really happened for him yet. He's had some amazing moments, amazing catches and 7 touchdowns. So I mean, he hasn't had a bad rookie season, but not quite the number 1 wide receiver that you'd want, or yet in for the Cardinals. So look, I think there's positives from the Patriots point of view. I think the main positive is Drake May. I think he's keeping up with the rookie class. I think it's actually been a decent rookie class in general, I think. But he looks every bit the type of guy who could be the quarterback of the future for the Patriots if they build around him. I wouldn't be as confident as you, Shane, that they're going to get the win. I think, look, the Cardinals have everything to play for here. They're still in that hunt for the NFC West. If they don't get a win here, I think they could really fall down the pecking order quite quickly as well. So I think desperation there will get the Cardinals over the line if I have to pick. But you could be right. It's a tough one to pick because I don't necessarily trust the Cardinals either.
No, you've waited your turn. What way do you see this one going?
Sorry, no.
That's all right, Kieran. I'm going to agree with you now anyway. But yeah, look, I mean, this Cardinals team, they do feel a little rudderless the last few weeks. And I agree completely when it comes to Kyler Murray. I mean, he's a quarterback who does have all the talent in the world, but it doesn't feel like mentally he's always switched on to take advantage of that talent that he has. And at the moment now, the Cardinals do feel like they're just kind of struggling a little bit. I do still think they have that potential explosive, players on offense. And on their week, they really can put up the points. I look at the New England Patriots, and I think defensively they could stand up to this Cardinals team. Offense, I still have questions, but like Kieran says, I think the biggest thing for New England this season is your rookie quarterback, and he does really look like he is developing to be a really, really good player. And I think from that point of view, that's a win for the Patriots. But again, Kieran mentions this Cardinals team. as listless as they look at the moment, they're still in with a shout in that division. And I mean, these are games that you think if you think you can take this division and go to the playoffs, these are games you need to win at home. I think they will have enough on offense to beat the Patriots. But again, I'm never ever sold fully on Kyler Murray, so it could go either way. But I think the Cardinals will win a close game.
Right, we're going to take 30 seconds. When we come back, we're going to be taking a look at the rest of the 9 o'clock window and Sunday Night Football, including the Battle of Pennsylvania between the Steelers and the Eagles. Welcome back to the final part of the Irish NFL show's preview of Week 15. The first game we're going to touch on in this section is the battle between the Indianapolis Colts as they travel to the Mile High City to face the Denver Broncos. Interesting one here, guys. The Broncos, who are at 8-5, currently hold the 7th seed spot. They're playing against the Colts, who are at 6-7, are tied for the 8th seed. Let's try this on for your statistics heads. At the moment, Denver has a 76% chance of making the postseason. The Colts, 27%. Depending on how this game goes, if the Colts win, their playoff chances jump to 65%. If win a loss, that goes down to 9%. This certainly seems like the season on the line here for Indianapolis. They're going up against a Denver team who are certainly going, maybe not from strength to strength, but are showing plenty to like about them. So, Noel, I don't know what way you have this one going.
Yeah, looking at this game, this really is a big game for both teams. I mean, who thought the Broncos were going to do what they're doing this season with Bo Nix? Obviously, they had question marks, and they really seem to have taken this season and gone running with it. I mean, Nix looks up there with all these quarterbacks that have been drafted this year. But you mentioned the Colts, and that's the interesting one, because I talked earlier on about the Texans and how the Colts will feel like maybe they have the run in that could help them kind of bridge that gap. The Texans are playing the Dolphins team this weekend, as we talked about it. I think that could go either way between two close teams. So for the Colts, this is a really, really important game. But I just think traveling to Denver is going to be a bridge too far. I think this Sean Payton team has really surprised me this season. In their defense has been top class, and then Bo Nix has been out there really showing us that he is a good quarterback in a division where, obviously the Chiefs were favourites to be ahead of the pack, and they are. But the Chargers and the Broncos have really come out this season and maybe turned some heads. So I think the Colts need this win because it could potentially help them stay with the Texans. But I think this Broncos team is too strong. Cortland Sutton's having a good season. Bo Nix, as I mentioned, is doing really well. And you've got a defense that I think will be good enough to control a Colts team at home. I mean, they've had their issues at quarterback. We know Richardson came out, Flacco went in. They have players in offense that can cause problems, but I still think Anthony Richardson can be a little too erratic at times. And I think this is a Broncos defense that can take advantage of any slip-ups he may have. So I think the Broncos will win, and I think it'll probably be a comfortable win as well.
Yeah, just to keep things moving along, I was going to say I think the Broncos will win this one as well. More in a greater confidence in their passing game and what they will be able to do. I don't really see the Colts defense being able to really trouble or sack Bo Nix or really manage to get as close to some of the Broncos receivers as they'd like to. So I think the Broncos might be able to edge this one. Kieran, what way do you see this going?
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I think Anthony Richardson, I give him credit for shaking off, or he's done a lot to shake off the criticism he got. A few weeks ago when he subbed himself when he took himself out of the game. I think he's shown a lot of toughness since and a bit of resilience as well. So give him credit where credit is due. And again, he's a quarterback who could have a decent future here, but I don't think that the Colts will have enough. And if they do manage to get a win, it's not beyond the realms of possibility either. They do keep pace with the Texans, who as we said, could look below them and start to shake a little bit as well. But this is a big dogfight here in the AFC for those last 2 spots. Throw in the Chargers, throw in the Dolphins. And these are the kind of games you want now, because there's so much on the line. But I agree with you. I think Sean Payton has been really steady. Bo Nix has been really steady this season. Cortland Sutton, as you mentioned, has been having a great season. So I think the Broncos have more in their locker, and I think they come away with this one.
Right, we're going to move on now to the Battle of Pennsylvania. We saw in November a particular Battle of Pennsylvania between the red and the blue. This time it was between the black and the green. Pittsburgh Steelers coming to this at 10-3. Philadelphia Eagles coming to this at 11-2. It's not only bragging rights for the Keystone State, it is both of these teams really want to show themselves to be Super Bowl contenders. And depending on how things go elsewhere in their respective conferences, if the Steelers might come into this one with an eye of getting the number 1 seed on Christmas Day against the Chiefs, the Eagles themselves maybe eyeing the number 1 seed as well, depending on how the Lions get on over in Detroit against the Bills. Really is a lot on stake here. 2 excellent teams coming against each other. I find it difficult to find the actual X factor. When you look at the fact that the Eagles are on a 9-game winning streak, it's difficult to go against them. But the Steelers can definitely beat anybody on the day, and they look to be getting just that little bit better each week. Noel, what way do you see this one going? On mute again, Noel, I'm afraid.
I keep forgetting about that one. Yeah, no, look, I think this is going to be a really good game. These are two really top teams who will be going, into the end of this season thinking about, not just playoffs, but Super Bowl. The Steelers have been, they've been really balanced for me. They have a defense that is one of the top defenses in the NFL as a whole, and they just needed that offense with Russell Wilson coming in just to give them that little bit of, explosive plays with a George Pickens and Najee Harris, who over the last few weeks has really stepped up. And I like what they've been doing. And I think the Steelers team, have won probably more games than I thought they would this season, and are definitely a team that are going to be a problem going forward. But I look at this Eagles team, and I think bar the Lions in the NFC, I think this Eagles team are really up there. I know last week it wasn't the most convincing win, but they still have some really, really good players in there. Obviously, we look at Saquon Barkley this season. At running back, for me, he has definitely put his name in the ring for MVP with the way he's elevated this Eagles offense. We know how the Eagles finished last season really poorly, and we questioned how it would be this season. Well, I think they've come back really strongly. And for a while, they just moved along nice and quietly. People weren't really talking about them. But as you say, Shane, they were just building up win after win after win. And I think this is an Eagles team that have enough on offense, as tough as it will be against the Steelers team, to do enough to get a tight win. So I think the Eagles will continue their great run. I think they'll just scrape it past the Steelers team.
Kieran, it's interesting in the history of this team. There were once one during wartime when they were, of course, the Steagles, as they sort of united into one entity. And it's interesting that some of the talk around these teams is that the very physical nature of their way in terms of the run game, line of scrimmage play will be key to, I guess, which way this game will go. So you have to wonder whether that kind of wartime era football might come in handy for either of these teams, depending on how the weather is in Pennsylvania. I know it's quite snowy in some parts of the Northeast at the moment. For example, the Bills, it didn't even train today. It's so bad, and they're not that far away from Pennsylvania. So, yeah, it's very difficult to try and figure out which X factor is going to be the biggest X factor in this. So, what way do you see this going?
It's interesting now, Shane, you mentioned the war, because I'm focused more on the war of words that was happening this week in the media. You see AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts coming out, and they had some very, very touchy kind of press conferences when AJ Brown was complaining about their lack of a passing game. And I think Brandon Graham threw a grenade in the mix then when he publicly spoke about the relationship between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts breaking down. And I think the Eagles have put themselves under huge pressure this week. Look, we all know about their collapse last year, and it was public. When they were 10-1, they were the worst 10-1 team that we've ever seen, because all we were doing was talking about how things weren't right or things weren't going well, and it did play out. They absolutely collapsed towards the end of the season. Now, this is the kind of thing that can, look, they could go out and get a win against the Steelers, put it all to bed, and galvanize the team this week. But they could go out, if they go out and lose, then that's just going to be the talk all about the Steelers, about the Eagles going forward, and they're going to have to live with that kind of monkey on their back for the rest of the season. The interesting thing is the other reason they've put a huge amount of pressure on themselves is I saw a stat this week or the other day that Jalen Hurts, for the first 4 games, he threw 30 passes or more. He attempted 30 passes or more, and they went 2-2. He's attempted fewer than 30 passes in every game since, and they're 9-0. So if you've got AJ Brown publicly out there putting pressure on him to attempt more passes and try and get the game going, I mean, that statistically puts their game at risk. We all know that Saquon is, this team. Saquon is what makes this team go. And I think they're after. They've committed a huge faux pas in the media this week, and do you know what? I actually think the Steelers are going to capitalize. I think the Steelers are going to win this game, because bear in mind, if the Steelers win and continue to win, and if the Chiefs can slip up just once, if they can just get on the other side of one of those close games just once, we'll have a cracker on Christmas Day, because the Steelers are going to be playing the Chiefs for potentially the 1 seed, which would be super as well. So maybe it's heart over head, but I think the Steelers are going to keep pace this week.
I'm glad you mentioned on the topic of mentality, because I think mentality is going to be very key into how this game will go. Because what team are better mentality monsters, other than the Chiefs, arguably, are better mentality monsters than a Mike Tomlin unit? We know that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. The Steelers keep getting these winning seasons for a reason. Russell Wilson, after the fiasco not fiasco, but how bad he played in Denver, is playing well in Pittsburgh for a reason. Come up against an Eagles team who, yes, are riding high on their talent, but we know in terms of their mentality, as you alluded to there, Kieran, I think there are still cracks around there, and all it takes is for a true mentality vulture to come in and break that apart. And I think the Steelers are in a very good position to do that. It is interesting though that George Pickens may not be available. He is listed as questionable with a hamstring injury. That will probably change how the Steelers will approach this game in particular. If it is going to be a very run-heavy game, you're of course going to back what the Eagles can do with Saquon Barkley on their side. But, if we're waiting, it is coming into the fourth quarter, and you're waiting for one or two things to go in a particular way. You're waiting for somebody to keep calm and make the right decision. And I think this will be close in the first 3 quarters. I don't think either team have enough physical advantage, skill advantage, or gameplay advantage to be 14 points up at some point in the game. I think they're going to be trading scores, or even if there aren't a lot of scores, and we're going to get to a point in the fourth quarter, whether it's just kicks or whatever, where something is going to have to either go right or go wrong for somebody. And you're going to question decision making, you're going to question leadership in the group, and I'm backing the Steelers to have the mentality to win that battle every single day of the week, and twice on Sunday. I hope twice this Sunday. So for me, I think that the Eagles' run is going to come to a bit of a halt. I'm backing the Steelers to come out as victorious in this one. We move on to the matchup between the Buccaneers and the Chargers, the final of that 9 o'clock window. Interesting. I think both of these teams could do with a victory. The Buccaneers would definitely like to have a bit of breathing room over the Falcons. Even though the Falcons have lost 4 in a row, that battle for the NFC South is still heavily on their minds. The LA Chargers, there's twice they've lost to the Chiefs now. A very, very close game. The kick just about managed to go inside the posts for the Chiefs. And I think, as we were alluding to when we were talking to a few Chargers fans, I think the Chargers people know that as an organization that they have the skills to do it. They just need the experience to go and start winning these games. And they're playing at home against the Buccaneers, though. I have to wonder whether that's the kind of game which they can properly take control on. I trust the Harbaugh defense. And I think Justin Herbert as well has been maybe a little bit dry in the last couple of weeks. Going up against the Buccaneers defense, where you might get a little bit more room to move. I'm backing the Chargers to come and be victorious in this one. Noel, what way do you see this?
Yeah, I'm gonna edge the way you're going there as well, and it is this Chargers defense that I think can step up against the Bucs and make a difference. I mean, we know Mayfield has had a really good season this year, but he still can throw the odd interception, and I think this Chargers team can unsettle him a bit and take advantage of that. I mean, it's the Chargers offense that I don't have obviously full confidence in like I do the defense. I mean, Justin Herbert is a phenomenal quarterback. I still think they're a bit light at times, but still Lad McConkey has shown that he is a good player and he can make plays. Quentin Johnson can make plays at times. He still needs to up his game a bit more consistently, but he still can be an option. You know, when he has a good game, he can make some good plays and get some touchdowns. So I think this Chargers offense will do enough against the Bucs, but I think it's this Chargers defense that's going to go out there and stifle the Bucs offense and win this game for them.
Right, before we skip on to your beloved Packers, Kieran, what way do you see Bucs and Chargers going?
Yeah, for me, it kind of depends on the availability of. I'm not too sure what the injury status is on Lad McConkey. But I think he's proved himself a bit of an X factor. I do think that the Chargers are a more consistent team, and I go with you guys. I think the Chargers are going to win it, even though, Baker Mayfield has stepped up, and the Bucs look like the cream of the NFC South. I think with a loss this weekend, I don't think it affects their chances. I think they're going to win that division anyway. But I think the Chargers are going to win this one.
Right, well, as I alluded to, Sunday Night Football is the battle between the Green Bay Packers and the Seattle Seahawks, this time in Seattle. Echoes of NFC Championship games of the past. This one, some great memories in this particular matchup, I think maybe for one team more than the other. But interesting one, the Packers coming in as a 3-point favorites. They're riding high. They're still in that battle for the NFC North in a weird way. They're definitely trying to lock in at their wildcard spot as much as possible. The Seahawks, by the time they come into this one, will know the result of the Cardinals game, and more importantly, will know the result of tonight's game between the Rams and the 49ers. If you listen to us on Friday morning, you will know. And I think what way the Rams do will definitely put a lot of pressure on the Seahawks, or maybe not put as much pressure as we thought on the Seahawks to perform in this game. Kieran, as a Packers fan, you're looking at this, do you feel confident that your team can go in and get a victory in the home of the 12s?
No, I don't feel overly confident. I'm hopeful, and I believe they can get a win, but I'm not overly confident. In fact, I actually had a better feeling about the Lions game last week, or 2 weeks ago now. But look, following the Packers all year, they haven't. I don't think they've got that statement victory yet. You know, they've beaten the teams that they should have beaten, and they've lost to the teams that they were underdogs against, really. So things have gone according to plan, if you know what I mean. But this is a tighter game. They're a favorite this weekend, but it's quite tight. And I think the Seahawks are on a bit of a roll at the moment. When you look at Smith and Jigba, the way he's flying, you see the game that Charbonnet had at the weekend, 134 yards on the ground. It's hard to be overly confident that you can get over that team pretty easily. The Packers as well, as much as I've appreciated that their defense has improved this year. Teams have been able to get up the field on them when they've had to. I'd almost count the Bears win as a loss, in that the Bears got the yards and they got themselves in position to get that go-ahead field goal. I'm sorry, Noel, for bringing it up, but that was that was a loss in my.
We don't have the win on our record, so it's no good to me.
I get that as well, but that was they did 99% of what they had to do to beat the Packers, and the worrying thing was Caleb Williams was able to get up the field and get those yards. I think the defense softened basically when they needed to be a little bit more decisive. And in a close game, you just want, you want your defense to come out and put a game like that to bed. Look, Love has been he's off the back of 3 clean games now, no picks in the last 3 games, and that's very positive. But I think they're actually putting the ball in his hand a little bit less. And I don't know, is that alluding to a lack of trust or a lack of faith from LaFleur? Is he worried about Jordan Love being a bit too loose? I mean, he completed some very high-risk throws against the Lions. Really, he showed super arm talent, but they could just have easily been picks as well. And I think, I don't know, are you seeing some conservative coaching on the part of LaFleur? The other thing that worries me is Jayden Reed. I talked about, having confidence in the fact that they had such a wide array of weapons. Having said that, Jayden Reed has struggled to get into the last couple of games. Romeo Dobbs has been banged up. Christian Watson has been hot and cold. I mean, he had over 100 yards last weekend, but he had that really costly fumble, and it was a really poor decision. He's been very hot and cold. So no, I'm not confident, but I'm hopeful. I do think that they have the talent, and I do think overall that they are a slightly better team this year. But Seattle will have every faith that they can get a win at home here this weekend.
Yeah, I find it difficult to properly gauge this one in terms of the talent available to both sides and what way they will actually use them. Because I know both teams are capable of good defensive game plans more than they are of offensive game plans. We know that Jordan Love has problems with ball control. We know that the Packers can often rely on trying to diversify what they do on offense, and maybe the Seattle defense might be able to learn to adapt to that a bit more. I'm going with Seattle for two reasons, and I think it will be a close one. And I'm not expecting too much of I'm not expecting a huge level of scoring to happen here. I just think that Seattle have just a better idea as to what they're doing on offense than they did at the start of the season. I think Geno Smith's relationship with his wide receivers is getting stronger. DK Metcalf looks like his injury isn't as bad as it was last week, so he's feeling a little bit better. Kenneth Walker did not participate, but if he's the only real I guess injury concern that Seahawks had, I know Tyler Lockett, according to the injury list here, was rested, but he'll be grand for Sunday night. If that's the only proper injury concern, Seattle then have a pretty full array of what they can do, and you can see what Charbonnet does on the ground. He's just a fantastic player. But for what stung for me though is when I looked at the statistics, and this is interesting because of course he's a battle between two teams who I think are in the good but not great category. And you're looking at what can swing either way. And in each of the last 10 games that these two teams have played against each other, the home team has won. Interesting because, of course, both of their home field advantages is what makes them so appealing to so many fans internationally. I know a lot of German fans are Packers or Seahawks fans because of their home atmosphere. It's almost Bundesliga-like. And I just wonder, in prime time, considering the Seahawks really need to keep their steam rolling the further they get into the season, because the biggest game of the season for them will be on the last week of the year when they have to play against the Rams, because that matchup was a matchup they have not gotten on top of in the last couple of years. So they'll need to get as much victories as they can going into this. As much as Jordan Love and the Packers definitely showed themselves to be excellent in the tail end of last year, I'm just not fully seeing that kind of resurgence. So for me, I think this will be a win for Seattle, and a win that will be on the board, unlike the win for the Packers, or unlike the supposed win for the Bears a couple of weeks ago. Very interesting. Great gas, by the way. I was hearing a Packers fan, say, "Oh, we beat the Bears, we won't let it count. It's the biggest rivalry in the league." But that's all part of the fun. Noel, I'll pass the final word.
Hold this up while Noel makes his pick there.
See, this narrow little window has blocked all my Bear stuff around me. That's what you're doing. You're cutting it all off. No, looking at this game, I think this is going to be a really good game. I think I'm really impressed with the way the Seahawks have gone. I think this Mike McDonald defense now is really starting to step up, and they do have players on offense, especially Smith and Jigba, who is really starting to kind of fulfill that potential. I'd be a little worried week on week with Geno Smith. He's one of those, he kind of feels like Kyler Murray to me, not as bad as Kyler Murray, but he's one of those players that, when he's hot, I think he can be really good, and when he's not, he can kind of trip himself up a bit. But I'm going to go for the Packers in this game, even though I've said all the good things about the Seahawks, pretty much basically because I'm hoping to jinx them. So that'll be it for me. No, look, I think the Packers have some really good players. I think I like LaFleur as a head coach. I think he does a great job on offense. And I just have a feeling that this Packers team will go to Seattle. It'll be a tough game, but I think with Jacobs running and doing well, and you still do have some exciting talent in terms of tight ends and wide receivers, I think the Packers will have enough, because I do believe both teams need this win. I know the Packers are sitting third in the division, but with 8 wins, there's still, a handful of teams that are a win or two behind them. So it's important that they get a win. And obviously for the Seahawks in the West, it's important that they get a win, given what's kind of happening there. I just think the Packers, I have a feeling that they'll be able to do enough on offense to go in there and get a tight win.
Right, my laptop's about to die, so I guess we better sign off on this preview of Week 15. Can you tell we're excited, by the way? We really went into each of these games in a pretty excruciating level of detail. I can't wait until each of these teams manage to prove me wrong, as they so often do in the key areas of the witching hour. For now, for myself, Shane, from Noel, and from Kieran, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Our live coverage reconvenes on Monday evening. We will have our instant reaction podcast available from the early hours of Monday morning, along with the Monday Night Football doubleheader preview available from lunchtime on Monday. But until then, from all of us here at the Irish NFL Show, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to us.